Hello and welcome to Bridging Talks. This is episode 2 and we are featuring Paul Roberts. And Paul Roberts, he's based in Japan. So nice to have you on, Paul.
Thanks, Vinny. Great to be here. Great to be with you for episode 2.
Yeah, so Paul and me, we met back in Yokohama and we were at this event from, I believe, Venture Cafe. They were organizing one. And
that's right.
After meeting Paul, we had a casual conversation, and then we keeping in touch since then. So Paul, can you just start by just doing a little intro about yourself? You can just say whatever. So please tell us.
Okay, great. I'm Paul Roberts. Originally from the UK. I grew up in Ireland, and I've been working as a recruiter in Tokyo since 1999, so quite a while. Mostly working the sort of English or bilingual English-Japanese tech space. That's the kind of area that I work in.
Oh, right. Okay. So in the UK, are you from, what city are you from? Were you born in Manchester?
I was born in Manchester.
Yeah.
My mum's Irish, so when I was 10 years old, the family moved to Ireland. So I grew up there. And then I got a little computer called the Spectrum, which some of the older, perhaps UK viewers may know of, which was a kind of an 8-bit computer I got in 1983 as an 11-year-old kid. And learned to program on that. And then sort of decided I'd go off and study computing at college. So I went off and did a basic computer science degree. And after that, I'd done an internship with an Irish software company.
Nice.
And I rejoined them after college. They asked me if I wanted to go and work in their London office for 6 months. They were kind of short-staffed. I'd never been to London. I'd never been on a plane. I always got the ferry from the UK to Ireland and back. And so I wasn't so sure. So I said, well, I'll go for 3 months. See how I like it. And I went over and I ended up staying in London for about 5 years. So while I was in London, I basically worked as a tech support engineer for the company and had some Japanese friends. One of them finished studying, came back to Japan, said, do you want to come visit Japan sometime? I thought that's a great idea, great opportunity. I'd never have thought of visiting Japan. So I came over for a couple of weeks in 98. And I think maybe like you when you have a first visit Japan and you kind of, wow, it blows your mind. I went back to London. It was cold. It was rainy. I'd been in the same job for about 5 years. It was time for a change. So the following summer, I basically quit my job, packed a backpack and kind of moved over here on basically a tourist visa, hoping to find a job and do some job hunting during that tourist visa. And I went to Japanese school for a couple of months, came up to Tokyo, visited some recruiting agents looking for jobs. They couldn't find me an IT job. I had no Japanese skills. And but one of them said, hey, you can speak English, you know something about IT, you're here, would you like to join us as a recruiter? And I thought, why not? That sounds like fun for a year. And that was kind of the initial plan, just stay here for a year, maybe 2. Went back to Ireland, waited for my visa to come through, and then came over and started working here at the end of 99. And 2 years has turned into about 25 and a half so far. So now I'm no longer a 27-year-old with a backpack. I'm 53, family, mortgage, and been here for quite a while.
I love your story there, because that's why I remember, when we met, I was in like the last year, I was in the same kind of scenario there where I just came by tourist visa to Japan and just, casual networking and at some point planning on going there as well. But I was really kind of inspired, like how you managed to just take that risk, come and just see the unknown. And sometimes taking those unknown things opens up new worlds. And
absolutely.
I read
I was going to say, I didn't see it perhaps as being that risky. I kind of thought, if things don't work out, which I didn't expect to work out, I didn't really expect to find an IT job. So, in those days, sort of English teaching was the default. After that, maybe recruiting or selling pensions to expats. They were the kind of the sort of the 3 main jobs for people with weak Japanese language skills. unless you maybe got sent here by a company and things like that. So it's kind of different sort of situation. So I thought, I'll have a long holiday. Worst case scenario, I'll have a long holiday. I could stay up to 6 months, initial 3-month visa, extend for another 3, and then go back to London or go to Dublin. Celtic Tiger economy was kind of growing at that point, and just get another job in IT there. So I didn't really see it as that risky, but definitely an adventure I wanted to kind of do and see what would happen. And I'm glad I tried it out and gave it a go.
Yeah, that's quite cool. So in total of years, how many years have you been in the recruitment industry for?
Yeah, so 25 and a half. So
Wow.
basically, once I got my work visa, then I started working as a recruiter in November 99, and that's what I've done ever since, basically.
That's nice. And when you first started like recruitment, what were any like? Did you come across any challenges and like the culture barriers and so on? Like because you said like you didn't know Japanese at first, and how did you like overcome that in the beginning?
So I think one of the key things that the company I worked for was a Japanese company that was founded by a British guy.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
The general manager who hired me was an American. And their focus was on recruiting and kind of other services, IT services, web design, things like that for foreign companies. So their customers were basically a lot of small and medium-sized kind of enterprises, often set up by foreigners, and also big kind of global companies. So I was recruiting mostly sort of for banks, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, things like that, which were global companies. So
right.
they worked in English. I wasn't recruiting for kind of typical domestic Japanese companies. And so in that case, that was pretty easy because I already spoke English. So I just go off and, working, everything was in English. So meetings were in English, emails, resumes, CVs, everything was English. So the downside of that is you're in a kind of English speaking bubble. So if there wasn't really opportunities to use Japanese or speak Japanese so much, perhaps, especially in business side. So that was perhaps a negative side of it. I think challenges, it was a very international environment. We had probably about 60 employees, plus 100, 150 contractors, and 20 to 30 different nationalities. So challenges, actually, I more culture shock working with Americans. I had an American boss who was extremely blunt and direct. And so I had more culture shock working for an American boss than I did with working with Japanese colleagues. I think that I kind of settled in working with Japanese colleagues pretty easily. But I think one thing people sort of think if they're coming to work in Japan that, sort of understanding Japanese mindset or Japanese culture is enough. It depends where you work. In a company with 20 or 30 different nationalities, you've got so much of a different mix of backgrounds, ways of approaching communication styles and things like that. So, Japanese colleagues were perhaps 40% of the company, but then there were people from everywhere else. So I was exposed to many more nationalities than I had when I worked in London, for example. So I'm getting used to how do people from, India communicate, or Eastern Europe, or, South America, or Canadians, or what have you. So, exposed to a very wide range of people. Plus, everyone's a unique individual, right? So, you might have multiple people from the same country. Doesn't mean they all think in the same way. Even very, very different ways of thinking. Kind of culture tends to perhaps be an average across things. I think challenges. Probably an American boss was probably the biggest challenge. But in terms of kind of settling in and stuff like that, I was very lucky that I got hired because I spoke English and the work was all in English. And I still focus in the English-speaking market, even today if I'm working with Japanese clients. As I work more with Japanese startups and Japanese tech firms now, but typically then that's in English, working with them to find bilingual Japanese engineers or Japanese English-speaking foreign engineers.
Yeah, that's interesting there. Like the more challenges you had working with was for like with someone who's based from US and so on compared to Japan. Yeah, because when it comes to like people from UK and Japan, what I've realized is that we've got similar culture there. It's, for example, is that in Japanese they call it the omoyari bunka. It's like the majime culture, like sincere, like whatever they feel they'll just keep it inside, and they want to just make sure that the outside is always you know, basically they don't want to say no. They'll come around
Right.
saying no in their own way, where saying something like, oh, this is difficult and so on. But yeah, I've been in situations where I've met some people who are like really direct, and yeah, that's another culture shock there. And yeah, it's so yeah, thanks for telling us that. And what we're now interested about is just pretty much more into like your career, day-to-day things. So in terms of like your experience when hiring in Japan, I mean, when recruitment companies, whether it's your company or other companies, what are like the challenges and mistakes do people come across when they're hiring there? In terms of this, of course, this challenges could be one example, like language barriers. But yeah, this is like, again, an open-ended question, so feel free to answer in any way. Yeah.
I think so. My sort of area of focus is tech recruitment.
Right.
So
Okay.
you know, there's obviously sort of people recruiting for accounting and HR and manufacturing and other things, and they're areas I don't mix with. So my sort of specialty and niche is the tech side of things. So I'll kind of speak maybe from that kind of point of view. So I think you know, Japan has a very high tech image. You know, when before I came to Japan, my image was, you know, they kind of say Japan has been living in the sort of the 21st century since the 80s, that kind of futuristic world kind of thing. And in many respects, in you know, that was very correct, but not in things, for example, like software. So you know, hardware, semiconductors, robotics, manufacturing. You know, Japan, world-class leader, has been for many years. When you look at software, especially consumer-facing software, very, very different. And I talk to people in sort of developing nations who are interested in coming to Japan, and they can do a lot more on their phone in banking and things like that than, you know, I can in Japan on my phone. I end up having to go to the bank, filling in forms, stamping it with my handco,
in person,
in stamp, and stuff like that. So I think Japan has recently woken up to the fact that software is a thing. It should probably be better at doing it. I think COVID probably had a lot to play in that. Japan wasn't, you know, we didn't have lockdowns and things like that, but obviously, you know, people's behavior changed. People didn't want to handle cash, so people started using payment apps. Before that, Japan, very cash focused kind of society, and so, you know, COVID sort of changed things like that. Things like remote work. I'd hear companies say, no, we can't do remote work in Japan. It's impossible. And then, you know, COVID hits, and a week later, everyone's working remotely. My wife works for a very typical Japanese company, and, you know, within a week they were fully remote. Everything was sort of delivered by courier, whole IT setup delivered, all set up. And then suddenly she's remote work and didn't need to go to the office for like a year and a half. Whereas, you know, a week before that, it was kind of, no one can ever, you know, work remotely, it just won't work. So COVID brought along a lot of changes, and suddenly sort of people realized that there was a software world that Japan was behind in. Japan is still very often very top down. So, you know, the government took notice of this and is trying to kind of push what they call DX, digital transformation. And so you've got a kind of a push to catch up with the rest of the world in terms of IT and software. So the challenges then are, you know, Japan hasn't produced enough software engineers for various different reasons. You know, people are lacking kind of world-class practices, world-class experience. So the solution for many companies has been, you know, is to kind of import talent. And probably starting around perhaps about 2010, 2012, we saw companies like Rakuten, which is a big e-commerce conglomerate here, kind of well known in Japan, perhaps not as much outside. Uniqlo, a fast retailer, the company that owns Uniqlo. Now, companies like this change the working language to English so that they could globalize and also, allow them to bring in talent from overseas. So the big challenges then for many companies are just hiring skilled people who they can kind of relocate to Japan, or if they're finding people locally, hiring skilled people to kind of build all of the software that needs to be built to kind of drag Japan kind of up to date with the rest of the world. So so challenges, technical skills, language skills, culture fit, all of these kind of things that perhaps you don't see in perhaps in the UK. If you speak English, kind of good. For Japan, often then it's do you speak Japanese? Do you speak English and Japanese? These kind of things get a little bit more difficult to kind of resolve.
Yeah, so that's right. So because of the language barrier, professional culture barriers, that's one of the things that companies probably find it hard to find the match, and not just personality, but tech-wise. But in your experience,
absolutely.
In your experience, how do they come around this problem? How do they find a solution to this problem? Do they use do some companies hire some contractors, have some dedicated team that deals with this, or the companies that you've dealt with, in your experience, what do you think? How do you think they deal with this problem?
So if you imagine a sort of a Japanese company, the employees are all Japanese, or maybe some foreigners who speak business level Japanese. Their working language is Japanese, but they hit a block then of trying to grow their, for example, engineering teams or product teams or design teams. For them, the answer for many of them has been to change the working language to English.
Right, that's one.
And then, and then having sort of people in interface roles. So say, product managers, for example, or project managers being a bilingual interface between engineering and then the internal or external customers. So that's sort of something that's opened up for many companies. So, example, one Japanese company I work with, I think probably 6 or 7 years ago, hired their first non-Japanese person, and we're very impressed with the guy. Made him a manager, and then sort of said, well, listen, if we worked in English, maybe we could find more people like you. And so sort of then just got much more open-minded in the hiring, open to relocating people from overseas, doing video interviews by video. Until COVID, every time I had a candidate interview, it was in an office face to face, generally wearing a suit. And then COVID comes along and you've got Zoom and Google Meet. And then companies go, we could talk to people in other countries using Google Meet and hire people. And so that company now changed the working language of engineering to English for across the board. They've got Japanese engineers with some English or strong English who want to kind of improve their English skills, work in English. And then they relocated many people from overseas who are interested in Japan and have great engineering skills that can come over. And the company's been very successful in the Japanese market as a result of that. So that's kind of one approach. Others, Japan is the land of vendors. Kind of software development here was often done with system integrators, SIers, so IT services companies who were kind of in between. Rather than having your own IT department, building your own software, or buying packages or SaaS solutions, you'd basically hire a vendor, they'd build it for you. So you get vendors who are opening overseas offshore development centers. So they'll have a center in India, Vietnam, China, somewhere like that. And in Japan, then they've got, again, the sort of bilingual people who are facing the customers. And then the solution then for them is, either developing in Japan or offshore, or a mix of the two. And some companies doing that as well themselves, perhaps creating subsidiaries in other countries. Japanese companies have been doing this, subsidiaries overseas, where they find it more easy to hire IT people. and then kind of having interface people in Japan. So lots of different sort of approaches. For me, my specialty is finding people either locally or who are interested to relocate to Japan, and then kind of working with people like that. That's kind of the space that I work in. But it's been sort of a mix of different kind of approaches. Other companies kind of, just stuck their head in the sand. They're too resistant to change, and they're again, running on legacy, basic crap legacy systems. They're just going to all fall apart at some point, and they're just putting off. You get a lot of sort of middle managers who are just like, I'll retire in 5 years, so let's just pump this off to the future. It'll be somebody else's problem. So you've also got quite a bit of that going on as well. But definitely, I think the Japanese companies have become better, more technologically aware in the last 5 to 10 years than perhaps they were before that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, when you mentioned about English language being used. So, like the first time I came to Japan, that was back in 2017, like 8 years ago, and last time I was there last year, 2024, and I've seen that there's more English in like just not just in like the work world, but like in everyday life. Like you see more English menus, like in restaurants, for example, and just in Uniqlo, like you mentioned there. So yeah, that's.
Well, we've got a tourism boom, which has had a big effect. So with companies kind of changing the hiring practices and modernizing them, at the same time, we've had a very weak yen sort of since the end of the zero interest rate kind of period in the West. Japan has kept interest rates very low. Other countries have raised them. That's pushed the value of the yen down, and then Japan just isn't the economic powerhouse it once was. So you end up with a weak yen. Great for tourism. When I came here in '99, I think there were 4 million tourists per year. And I think this year we're expecting 40 million. And the government has a target. Yeah, it's quite a difference. The government has a target of 60 million tourists by 2030. We'll probably hit that in 2027, 2028. That's come with its own problems. We've got over tourism and other things, but it has also, there's been opportunity. You'll find things like English language menus. Obviously, having better machine translation than 20 years ago. I had a paper dictionary, right? And which wasn't the most brilliant for going out ordering food. So things, the technology has made it a lot easier for people to visit here. And a lot of kind of technological solutions have been implemented for tourism and other things like that. But it's not without its kind of issues of over tourism and some badly behaved foreigners coming over here and other things like that. I've seen some videos, of people like dancing on the trains, doing pull-ups in the Fushimi-Inari area. They make a bad name for us, but anyway. It's quite cringe,
But, I mean, well, you've obviously pointed out that, 4 million, back in, like, when you first came into Japan, and 40 million right now, that's quite an increase, and then 60 million that's expected. With that being said, it will just not be tourism, but it will be just people actually coming into the country looking for opportunities, and there might be people like yourself who want to just try the tourist visa route and then just meet people and then build some connections and then see how it goes. So that's just kind of leading on to the other question where when you deal with international people, whether they're from UK, whether from the West or the East or Southeast, or they want to come to Japan, what is your process with them? Like, what do you do? So do you have like initial consultation with them, like an interview where they talk about what they're looking for? So if you don't have to tell the whole thing, whatever you're comfortable with. So just by them, let's say, getting on a video call with you, to coming to Japan, to finding an employer, potential match. So I would love to hear something like that.
Where to start? So as I said, I'm in the tech space, so people, kind of find me or reach me through a few different methods.
Right.
So one would be sort of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
People obviously, if I want to move to Japan, I'll go look for a recruiter.
Yeah.
Recruitment is still very big in Japan, whereas in other countries, sort of job boards and sort of direct applications and things like that. Japan's still working with recruitment agencies is still very big,
Right.
both for sort of hiring companies and for job hunters. I think now, when I came to Japan again, a long time ago, it wasn't a job for life at that point, or else I wouldn't have had a job because no one would have needed my services. But it's not mid-career hiring, people moving, changing jobs was probably I'm not sure the exact numbers, perhaps 10 to 30% of people would kind of change jobs. So working for your whole career as a Japanese person in the same company was not uncommon. Nowadays, I think the last numbers I saw was probably 70% of people will change at some point. So the job for life is perhaps 30% of people. So things have shifted, and the economy, a lot of different things have happened in Japan. So people are changing jobs more often. So people will find me online,
Right.
on LinkedIn, and say, hey, I'm job hunting, looking for a tech job. Have you any advice?
Right.
Other people, during COVID, all my customers stopped hiring, hiring freezes and stuff. So within the space of about 2 weeks, I kind of had nothing to do. So I started a blog, a tech blog, mostly interviewing people in the tech scene in Japan. So I interviewed you after we met. And I've probably done, I think, 30 or 40 different interviews. Also, articles on visas, job hunting advice, that kind of stuff. And I put a job board on that as well. And so people will see my job ads and will apply for jobs. I'm interested in this role. My kind of policy is I'm happy to talk to anyone. I'll try and help anyone and give advice to anyone. I'm always happy to grow my network. Now, there are people who will find it very difficult to get jobs here. The most obvious case is someone who doesn't qualify for a working visa. Japan is quite strict, so it's got very defined rules on working visas, for example. And so people may contact me, they're not going to be able to get a work visa. So that's probably the most feedback I can give them. For other people, maybe it's going to be we jump on a call, talk about the market, talk about job hunting tactics, how to kind of search here, how the market here is different from perhaps their home country or other countries that they've looked at, things like that. If someone's applied, directly for a role, then maybe I have an actual position, that we can just talk about and work on. For others, it's more general. Maybe I don't have a matching role, but I'm still happy to have a chat, point people in the right direction, connect people with communities, like product management communities, design communities, software engineering, other things where they can learn more about what's kind of going on. And obviously, a lot of people kind of sign up for my job newsletter and things like that afterwards as well. So I think kind of post-COVID, and probably from maybe 2017, 2018, I started seeing a lot more people from overseas who wanted to relocate here, kind of getting in touch and being hired by especially startups. A lot of the big established enterprise companies, they're still mainly focused on hiring people locally. They've got big brands, they've got lots of money, they can kind of compete in the local market. But if you're a 5-person startup, venture funded or bootstrapped, the easiest way has been to find people overseas, and then kind of bring them over, sponsor visas, help with relocation, and kind of build up like that as well. So probably, I'll get several people per week reaching out on LinkedIn, a few people per week messaging me through my job board or blog, and then I kind of follow up from there to have a chat and kind of see what help and advice I can give. In general, if people are kind of listening, watching this, and you're interested in coming over here, I think it's important to understand that the English-speaking job market is a niche within Japan's job market. It's a very small niche, really. Japan has pretty poor English language skills in general. I think I can't remember there's a group who rank countries based on English fluency. I think it's EFF, but I can't remember if that's correct, what it stands for. But basically, Japan was like 140 or 162nd or something like that. Everyone has 6 years of compulsory English education here, but you're kind of, nobody speaks. It's not taught perhaps in a way that encourages people to learn to speak. So people maybe get good at writing letters to imaginary pen pals, but can't really hold a conversation. So the English speaking market, it's a niche, and then I'm in tech, which is a niche within that niche as well. So it's very competitive. If you're overseas looking for a role here, companies have a lot of overseas applicants. Kind of everyone who comes here for like a 2 or 4 week holiday then goes home and thinks, I want to go live in Japan now. So you're competing with a lot of people. If the job kind of says open to for anyone anywhere to apply, we'll provide a visa, we'll provide relocation, then you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of people applying. So be very good at what you do. It's very difficult to get junior jobs here. Entry-level roles almost non-existent, unless you went to at the top 100 or top 10 university. The more Japanese language skills you have, the easier it is to find roles, kind of obviously. But very competitive. So be good at what you do. Be sort of mid to senior level. Have Japanese language skills if you can. That all of that kind of combined makes it easier to find roles here. Having said that, you'll still get junior people with no Japanese skills getting lucky. So I wouldn't tell anyone, give up on your dream. But it can be quite challenging. It's very competitive. If you're here, if you come over on a tourist visa, a digital nomad, working holiday, and then you're able to network, then you get to meet people like we've recently met at a networking event, and that also shows your interest in being here. So people to kind of take your applications perhaps more seriously, if you're here in some capacity. But obviously that's not possible for everyone. They've got life and mortgages and other things like that. But if possible, being here for some period of time can help that too.
Yeah, that's love that. That's a lot of interesting stuff there, and that was like pretty much a follow-up question, which you've already answered most of it, and that's great. And we're just gonna touch on that, where you said that it is competitive, but it's not impossible. So meaning what you said, to stand out again, Japan is more of a face-to-face culture there. So if you go there and meet people there, you can stand out for networking opportunities and so on. If you just add to that, what other things do you think are there that we can do to stand out? So if there's anyone, let's say it could be anyone who wants to go there from UK and find an opportunity, do so knowing the language, that's one of them. So getting there in Japanese, and of course being there in person and going to events like business events and so on, networking and so on. Other than that, is there anything you would like to add to that? Is there anything?
Yeah. Well, I think, coming over here is not possible for everyone. Right. You may not have the best Japanese language skills in the world. That's a long-term journey for people. But there still may be opportunity. So I think what's important is to understand a little bit about companies hiring here. Japan's quite risk-averse society, and companies, when they're hiring, are quite risk-averse. Labor protections are very strong for employees here. This is sort of the diametric opposite to the US, with the kind of hire quickly, fire quickly kind of mentality. Companies tend to hire slowly, and it's very, very difficult to get rid of people if you misfire. Even if you've got a probationary period and things like that, there's a lot of protections for employees. What that means is that when companies are hiring, they're very picky and very careful who they hire. What they don't want is obviously people who can't, who underperform in the role. So you'll find a lot of, in tech roles, a lot of technical interviewing, etc. You probably expect that anywhere. But you'll also kind of look for what companies trying to avoid is, so they hire somebody, they spend 3 months getting them a visa, which involves a visa lawyer, and stopping your recruitment process because you think you've hired somebody. And 4 months after someone signs an offer letter, they come over, and 3 months later go, wow, it's very hot in the summer here, I don't like Tokyo, I'm going home. And then they're like, oh, we've got to do all this again. And which has kind of been happening a little bit for companies perhaps. So I think the more connection you can show to Japan, and the more interest you can show and very explicitly show, the more likely, the stronger your case is for companies to have a look at you and talk to you. So, a generic resume, which is kind of, I'm a product manager with X years experience and I enjoy these kind of things, that may work at home and it may work in other sort of markets. But in Japan, the company's going to look at that and go, well, we don't see any connection with Japan there. So you want to sort of be very, I've been to Japan 5 times. If it's you, I've been to Japan 5 times. I've been studying Japanese, self-studying for 2 years. I've done my N5 exam. And I'm looking to relocate to Japan long term. Having that sort of something like that in your professional summary, rather than just a generic, summary that you would send anywhere. If there's opportunities for cover letters, mentioning your connections to Japan, even if it's just visits and things like that. Sometimes people have applied to roles. Maybe I post a job on LinkedIn, and then this looks like an interesting person. You arrange a call. And then I'm like, why are you interested in Japan? And the person's like, what are you talking about? Someone, this job's in Tokyo. It's up at the top of the thing. It's like, oh, sorry, I didn't notice. I was just kind of clicking apply. And so, companies, they're looking for that connection. They're looking for commitment and interest. Now, again, you're not going to know that you're going to work at any company 5 or 10 years or anything like that. But at least they're kind of hoping that you will. So, being very, showing the interest in Japan, showing why you're applying for a role here, tying it in with your past experience, and, things like that will help you stand out. Obviously being very good at whatever you do is a core. But I've worked with people from overseas who've never had an opportunity to visit Japan, but they've been studying Japanese and they've got really good Japanese language skills. And so even though they've never had a chance to visit for whatever reason, it's maybe too expensive for many people to come here, even with a weak yen, depending on where you are in the world. But they've still, put in the work and the Japanese language, for example, again, highlighting that. And that's the kind of what you lead with, is somebody who should be in Japan. Let's give this person an opportunity to interview, and if we're lucky, get over here.
Thanks for that. So there's a lot of good information there, and that's basically.
I was going to say, I expect that works if you're in other areas, non-IT.
Oh, right.
If you're in other areas and want to be here, again, showing that interest and commitment to stop being here. I think it's going to work in whether it's whatever kind of work you do as well.
Yeah, so that's I just want to add to that is where most people, they think like finding a job in Japan is just like English teaching and so on. That's like the common route, but then again, like because of people traveling to Japan and so on, like you said, like you have this niche, you're into niche recruitment, tech, English speaking and so on. So it's good to see that there's options for those who want to, they want to go there.
Teaching is still a great way to get here. So I know a lot of my friends from day one. I worked here, had originally come to Japan as English teachers, done a couple of years, and then kind of got into other fields, whether it was recruitment or marketing, different kinds of sales, things like that. So, one of my friends worked, I think mostly taught kids lessons, but he basically had a kind of, I think, 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. schedule for a lot of his kind of teaching career. So he studied 3 hours of Japanese every morning. Very, very diligently, 5 days a week. Got up at 8, studied 9 to 12, had his lunch, went off to work, and taught and did that for sort of like a couple of years, and got up to sort of N2, probably somewhere between N2 and N1 level Japanese, sort of business level to fluent, and then transitioned into being a HR manager. Basically from there. So, I think that for some people that can be their path to get here. For other people, it will be their current, job or the most recent 5 years of work experience. There's a lot of different sort of paths. So, look at different options and see what may work for you.
Yeah, there's many ways to enter, like you said. Like there's the tourist visa route where you just come in, network, and so on. And of course, there's this most simple way that most foreigners get into Japan for working and stuff is like English teaching. And yeah, it's nice to see that they can move on to their career ladder, like they get into HR and other stuff. And yeah, so yeah, thanks for that. Really, really useful stuff there. And it's just the same with me. I'm interested in Japan, in meeting people and so on. That's what we do. So so basically, I'm the founder of Bridging Connect, and this is our podcast service, Bridging Talks, and this is where yeah, we like networking with people and with professionals and businesses and so on. But yeah, let's go back to your like passion for Japan and everything. So I remember you said when you first entered Japan, it was tourist visa. You were 27 years old, backpacking.
Yep.
When you stayed there, when you came for the first time and you met some people, you did some networking, what kind of drew you into Japan? Like, what was it that made you feel like, oh, this place is so nice, like I want to stay here? Like, what was that bit? Like, just tell us about that spark, basically. Yeah,
I think probably a lot of it was just so different from where I came from. You know, and I sort of grew up in two different places. You know, Manchester, you know, industrial city, and then the Irish countryside. You know, my parents live in a plot of land in the corner of a farmer's field. And so my first trip to Japan, I spent about a week in Tokyo and a week in Kyoto. So my friend who invited me had studied in Kyoto and had friends there. And so I think, first of all, I was very lucky. I mean, I had basically a Japanese friend to show me around. And so I wasn't a very lost tourist. I was a guided tourist. Yeah, and kind of getting around a little bit, even though it was only a couple of weeks, getting around the country a little bit, kind of gave me enough sort of a taste to want to come back. But I think certain amounts of it was the sort of the novelty, just how things were so different, and but still worked. You know, also you know, this is not how we do things where I come from, and this works just as well or perhaps better. You know, first trip on the Shinkansen from Tokyo to Kyoto. You know, they come in with the coffee trolley, and I think they made discontinued human coffee service on the Shinkansens recently. But it was just I think so, or maybe on some lines. But it was just stuff like getting a can of beer and a bento and watching Mount Fuji flash past on the Shinkansen, and just kind of like, wow, you know, it was just sort of, this is amazing. And then meeting people, I was lucky then that I spent time with, you know, my friends' friends, most of whom didn't really speak any English, and you know, I basically know Japanese, so probably a bit tough for my friend who was sort of translating all the time. But I'm quite a talkative person, and I was sort of, you know, what's your life like, and how does this work, and you know, you're in university, what do you study, how does this work, are you working, what's it like, and just sort of, you know, kind of learning that things were so different. So I think that was probably it. The food is fantastic. I'm not a particularly picky eater, although my mother may say differently. I'm not a cabbage fan. Which is a bit of a staple in where I come from. But you know, I eat most things, so I'll try anything once. And so just fantastic food, and you know, the sights and the sounds. I went to play pachinko on my first trip, which is, I don't know if you've been to pachinko, but it's kind of a vertical pinball gambling. But I had, you know, but I didn't realize it was sort of like illegal gambling, so I just went along to play the pinball. I won. Sitting next to me was a very famous Osaka comedian who I didn't know was very famous Osaka comedian, but just a guy leaned over, was telling me what to do, and I won, and I cashed out, and I got some tokens, and I was like, what's this? You know, I spent 5,000 yen and I got some crap, not realizing that you go out and you go around the corner to a little hole in the wall and you give them your crap tokens and they give you like 25,000 yen. And now, is it illegal gambling or something? It's like, yeah, that's it. Like, brilliant. So just wacky experiences and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think that was the novelty of just everything so different culturally, food wise, and sort of getting to meet people and kind of talk to them and kind of get an insight into their lives, which are, you know, in many ways very different, but in many ways, very similar. Everyone worries about paying the rent and passing their college exams, and what kind of job will I get when I graduate, and all the really normal stuff that kind of binds us all together as people too. For my trip, when I kind of came here on my tourist visa, I went to Japanese school. First, I booked a 2-month Japanese school in Kyoto, and so I basically went to Japanese classes in the morning for like 3 hours, and then in the afternoon I had a bicycle. Someone in my accommodation loaned me a bicycle, and I had some friends from school, and we just sort of explored Kyoto in the summer heat, which is madness now. It's also a lot hotter now than it was then, but it's a hot city, and so Kyoto is a fantastic place to spend a couple of months learning Japanese, and then just cycling around all of the sights and sounds, and eating stuff, and that kind of just drew me. So there were no jobs in Kyoto for me, so then it was come up to Tokyo. I stayed in a gaijin house, which was probably 50% Japanese returnees, Japanese people who lived overseas and had come back to Japan and were from the job hunting, house hunting, or apartment hunting, and then sort of foreign residents, some kind of long-term others like me, kind of just looking for work, and then job hunting, and then finding a job, and then at that point, then it was the excitement of actually working in Japan, working in Tokyo, doing a job I'd never done before. Probably was, unsure if I could do, but thought, well, I'll give it a go. They seem crazy enough to give me the job, so I'll do my best, and then kind of, basing it from there. That was probably the story, the journey, and what kind of drew me initially. Yeah,
I like that, and that's something that I'm into as well, because it's different. It's something different now. I went back in 2017, and I went there first time. I was like, whoa, this place is like, it's amazing. Like I wanna come here again. And 8 years have passed by, and I went there every year. So it's like
you've been coming back every year,
and obviously I'll come this fall as well. So it'll be nice to see you and other connections. That would be great. So
Absolutely.
in terms of, since what I find interesting is that you're from the same country, from Manchester, from London, so on. You went to Japan, stayed there, and all these like over 20 years of you staying there. What do you think? Like, how has like Japanese culture influenced your character? So again, it can be any way. Has it made like? Do you think has Japanese culture, whilst living in Japan, has made you different? Like, let's say if you were living in Manchester or another country. Let's say what if, and compared to now, how do you think, like what things have you like adapted into like how the Japanese people live? So just feel free to let us know.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think if you want to go and live long term in another country, you've got to localize yourself, and perhaps the more the better. I think I'll never be Japanese, and I'm not trying to be or pretending to be, but I appreciate the culture. I appreciate how things are done, and I like to. There's a lot of things that kind of suit me and fit in. It's maybe it's small things. And when I go home, I often kind of feel like a tourist. So I went back to Ireland for a month in the middle of June. My mum's birthday. Went to spend some time at home. And I kind of I'm buying stuff in the shops, and I don't know how much anything costs anymore, like a can of Coke for a pint of Guinness, and so I'm kind of looking at my small change, and these euro 10 cents and 20 cents, and I don't know, just holding my hand up to the shopkeeper saying help yourself, and so there are small things like that. If I'm watching TV and I'm watching a kind of a foreign film or a TV show, and the characters are wearing their shoes in the house, that really irks me. I'm like, because I'm just, even when I go home, I'm just shoes off as soon as I get home. I'm watching, sort of Friends or something, and they're lying on their bed with their shoes, and like, do you know where those shoes have been today? So I've definitely sort of taken on the localize a lot in many respects. I think it's necessary, and it's, if you want to sort of be happy, living somewhere overseas long term, and it's also sort of, I think, respectful to where you go to take on board things. So I think I'm quite a flexible and open-minded person. So I think I what's the best way to I've never sort of thought when I got here, I never thought, there's one right way to do things, and it's the way that it's done where I come from. Because already, when I moved to Ireland from the UK, I had a culture shock. At that point, I couldn't really understand what a lot of people were talking about a lot of what people were talking about for about my first year, because even in Ireland, people were using the same words, but for completely different meanings. Sort of local slang and stuff like that. In Kilkenny, when I was a kid, if something was fun, it was a gallery. Well, for me, a gallery was, somewhere you exhibited art. It wasn't, a fun time. So I go to school and someone's saying it was blah, blah, blah. Yes, and it was a gallery. I'm like, I don't know what these people are saying. So I'd already had a kind of this culture shock experience, which, I kind of got over by, just be open-minded and localize. So perhaps coming to Japan, being open-minded and kind of localizing was perhaps a key. I think if you sort of think, the way I know how to do things is the only way, you're going to get very frustrated in Japan quite quickly, because it's a fantastic place and a fantastic place to live. It's no utopia. Japan has got its own issues, social problems, economic problems, all sorts of stuff. So I think if you're kind of mindset of it's my way or the highway, and you go somewhere that's very, very different, you're gonna, the country isn't going to adapt for you. You're going to have to adapt for the country. So I do feel, sometimes I do feel like a tourist when I go home. Last time I was in Manchester was probably like 2010, 2013, sometime like that. I've got family living there. Perhaps similar sort of things of feeling a little bit like a stranger. I left Manchester when I was 10 years old, so I was never an adult kind of living there. So it's always a little bit of a more childhood dreams for me when I go back. I've definitely taken on board a lot of a view of the world of perhaps a Japanese view of many things. So I like to kind of think I'm perhaps a bridge between, I can see the best in different cultures, my own background, Japan, and also a lot of the people I meet who come from very, very different cultures and backgrounds. And I'm really lucky. I've got friends from all over the world, four corners of the earth, and everyone's got sort of different views, different ways. And so it kind of that's kind of interesting how you guys do things. Similar to how you guys do things over in kind of putting things together as well. So I hope I'm a bit of a sponge. I'd like to think I am a bit of a sponge, kind of soaking up things and perhaps putting different things together.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I like that, and that's something I believe in as well. That like the East Asia, Japan, and the West, UK, there's like good things about each of the cultures, and we can get the best bits and like mix them together in a way. Whereas like most young Japanese people, like when they get the working holiday visa and so on, they want to leave the country because of these, the strict corporate world, the stresses. They want to, when they come to UK, they just travel around. They love the Western culture, because probably UK is like one of the first kind of Western country they've seen, the buildings, the houses, the UK, the Western structure. Same like us, when we go through Japan and Korea and so on, we like the Asian structure and so on. So that's one of the things. And of course there's social stuff as well, where in the West, people are like, they like think of like, let's say a big ship, right? Like Japan is like a big ship where everyone wants to protect that ship. If there's like a hole there, they know the ship's gonna sink, so they want to make sure they come and fix that hole. Whereas in the West, some countries, well, they're in the big ship, and if there's a hole in the ship, they'll be like, I'll just take a lifeboat and just I don't care what happens to it. So it's that kind of mindset.
I certainly appreciate a lot of the sort of the group oriented, maybe you say individualism versus group oriented. Right. I think there's a lot of basic respect for other people here that you may not find everywhere else. And that kind of comes down to sort of people's daily interactions and things like that. Quite different than perhaps warmth or friendship, or it can be difficult to make Japanese friends, for example, for people because people are they're don't maybe not exposed to other cultures as much. Maybe in school, if English class, you're learning about the US or UK or Canada or something like that. But I have a niece who is really, really good at English and doesn't speak English with me because she's so nervous about making mistakes in English and too shy that she won't speak any English with me, which is kind of funny, but understands everything I say to her.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. So yeah, it was really nice to hear all of that stuff. And again, there are culture differences, and having that kind of mix is the balance for foreigners who live in Japan and so on. So just want to ask now, in the recruitment world, especially when you hire international when you do international recruitment, ever since like AI is coming to place, and I know that I've read something about Reed and companies like Indeed and so on, they're using AI features in recruitment and so on. And because of one of the reasons where Japanese companies find it difficult to find talent is, again, language barriers, professional culture barriers, and now AI is coming. How do you think AI will kind of, in your experience and in your opinion, will shape like the recruitment world, and how will that kind of solve problems? Like language barrier can be one of them. So feel free to tell us your opinions about that.
That's a very good question, and I mean, I don't know if I have a particularly good answer. I mean, I think if you kind of see all sorts of, I'll see, if I just go on LinkedIn and look at recruiter chat, I'll get everything from AI will have zero effect, it's all about people, and I can't be replaced, to AI will replace everything. So I think we're still very early days. And again, when most people are talking about AI now, it's just really talking about LLMs, right? There's been AI for years in your YouTube algorithm recommendation engine or what have you. I kind of keep an eye on sort of recruitment technology in sort of the US. You're going to sort of probably see these things sort of deployed at scale in the US before anywhere else. And then I think the questions are how things will fit into Japanese culture, and also you've got how companies will react, and then you've also got how job hunters will react. I think it will if job hunters will be forced into applying for roles in particular ways, or using particular tools and stuff like that. So I think it's really early days. Like I said, Japan is still. I'm still trying to get good banking on my phone. 2025. So kind of replace a fully automated AI recruitment seems in Japan seems distant, and there's still a lot of very manual processes here across business in general. So I think Japan may well be the last holdout for a lot of recruitment technologies as they make their way in from probably from overseas. But what Japan tends to do with technology is kind of, what's the word, sort of like the Borg. Gonna have to edit this bit as well. Japan. So what Japan tends to do is kind of integrate technologies into the culture rather than changing the culture perhaps for the technology. So we will kind of localize and pick bits of what it likes that work in Japan, rather than just completely changing the way of doing things, to sort of an overseas way of doing things. So you still tend to get that kind of Japanization of technologies, and I expect AI will follow a similar path. The government here has sort of an idea that Japan can be an AI hub, and so there's a very active AI community here, groups like Tokyo AI and others. So Sakana AI was founded in Japan by a couple of the Google attention is all you need writers. So Japan is trying to kind of say not be a follower but be a leader in the space. Whether that will work or not, I have no idea. But certainly there's kind of an AI buzz. So I don't see so we may be be just local solutions that fit nicely into Japanese culture that then maybe get exported overseas and localized for other markets and stuff like that. But for now, I think, people, recruitment is probably just using LLMs for summarizing and other stuff like that as well. Writing job description or other things like that, which honestly, a lot of them are quite crap. If you just stick something, you say, ChatGPT, please write me a job description, you get very generic kind of things. And then using job descriptions for job adverts, which I hate, which is another thing completely. But we'll see. But it's at this point, Japan is not leading perhaps in AI adoption for recruitment, we could say.
I see. So yeah, so thanks for that. It's just definitely like AI will bring in some changes in terms of way people look for jobs and so on. Like you said, Japan at this moment they're not using as much, but eventually they'll come to play. And I like what you said about the technology being like rather than focus on technology first, there's the people first. So they kind of adapt the technology to the people rather than the other way around. And that's something, it's quite interesting. So I appreciate that as something to think about. And now what we're gonna do is just move on to gonna just talk about what you like and just in your personal time, your hobbies. It could be what you do in your free time. Let's start by talking about your hobby. So what do you like to do in your free time, Paul, then?
So let's see. Good question. I've been playing video games since I was a kid and got an 11-year-old who got an 8-bit computer. So
nice.
If I can get some time for a bit of gaming, then that's for sure. I'm probably kind of first-person shooters, Total War. I've been playing those since Shogun came out years and years ago. 20 years ago. I'm not a PlayStation sort of gamer. I'm probably more PC gamer.
Okay.
So that's that. Reading. I like to read, So I'll try the old self-improvement, get a bit smarter type of books, but I probably mix it up quite a bit. So I'll usually have one kind of serious type of book and then a novel or two on the back burner. So at the moment, probably a lot of crime books in the last couple of years, like the Nordic, Scandinavian crime kind of series, that kind of stuff. Catching up with TV shows on streaming services. Stuff like that. My wife quite likes British crime shows, so stuff like Vera and that kind of thing. So watch a lot of those. TV. Not perhaps the most interesting of hobbies. Being in Japan, like traveling around Japan, whenever I can as well. I go camping reasonably frequently, and so perhaps not as much as I like, but fairly often. So New Year was spent with my in-laws who like camping, and so we were up in the mountains in Gunma for about 3 days. I've got a couple of dogs, they've got a couple of dogs. So we get a dog-friendly kind of site where the dogs can run around free, which is pretty nice way to spend a couple of days. And camping in Japan is quite different than perhaps other countries. I have friends who camp in the US, and they go off into the wilderness and hours and miles away from other people. Here, it's campsites, and it's a lot of booking in advance, and it's kind of fairly you've got your plot often, so it's not particularly very wildernessy, but it's still great to get outside, get out of the city, get into the countryside, especially in the summer. If you get into places sort of the mountains, it's a lot cooler. Get out of the Tokyo heat. It's pretty hot and humid in the summer. Dogs, walking the dogs in the summer, 6 a.m. in the winter, perhaps a bit later in the day, but getting out and wandering around the neighborhood with them for 30 to 60 minutes a couple of times a day. Getting to the gym, not as much as I should, but a little bit anyway. And also eating, obviously great food, and so eating a lot of really nice food. If eating is a hobby, then I like to enjoy a lot of really good Japanese food. Also, Japan has great food from sort of everywhere now. The food is, people have very high standards for food. So you've got, fantastic Italian food, French food, Indian food, other things like that as well. Obviously, generally sort of catering to Japanese tastes. But there's still a lot of very, very nice things to eat as well, and I like eating them too. Hence the need to go to the gym a bit more. Board games, Dungeons and Dragons with the geeky friends.
Oh, okay.
So that every now and again get together for some of that.
Yeah.
Just sort of meeting friends and socializing. I'm very lucky that I get to meet a lot of really interesting people, and so getting out to meet people, have meeting, coffee and a chat or a couple of drinks, as well. Not sure, probably socializing as a hobby, but yeah, I'm quite lucky to get out and meet lots of really cool people. In the tech community mostly, but in other areas too, and so stuff like that too as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's quite a nice. You got nice hobbies, and it's good to see that you like games. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I've
nice,
tried
yeah.
martial art. I've
Yeah.
tried martial art and
Yeah.
other things throughout my time here, but I've got really dreadful body coordination, so that's not really stuck too long. So yeah, other things, but there's a lot of different stuff you can do. You could just wander around, trying a new ramen shop every night for 20 years if you wanted to. So there's plenty to keep you busy in Japan.
Yeah, sure. That's quite nice stuff. Yeah, I mean, I like that. Yeah. So what I just want to do now is just ask, like, in terms of like your everyday stuff, in terms of tools. I mean, when it comes to your work stuff, what tools do you kind of use for your work stuff? Like, I remember when we spoke, you mentioned something about like Notion before. So, what other tools other than like Notion or that you use that assists you in your productivity? So, if you could just tell us about that.
Yeah, nothing too exciting, perhaps, or groundbreaking. So for me, I mean, as a recruiter, we've got recruitment databases, that kind of stuff, for all of our managing our activities. Other stuff, calendar. I use TidyCal as a calendar, meeting arranger. I was a bit kind of a control freak, arranging meetings. Now, if people are happy, I'll send them a TidyCal link and off they go and they can do it themselves. I use Calendly, but I got sick of paying. It was $10. I think it was $10 a month, which was fine when $10 was like 1,000 yen. But as the yen got weaker, my prices kept going up. TidyCal is very similar, and it's a one-off. I think it was $30 or something like that. So I use Asana a lot for task management, for my blog, for kind of content management. And other things, I use Notion. I like the Kanban boards and things for kind of to-do lists kind of stuff. I'll use some LLMs for perhaps summarize or kind of some kind of sort of basic tasks. And they're good at manipulating language. They can be good at manipulating language, or checking copy editing if I write articles and stuff like that. Things sort of that, so ChatGPT or Claude, other things like that. iPad Mini, great with a little Logitech keyboard, great for being out and about, to carry around a laptop, and obviously an iPhone synced to everything else. Very sort of basic day-to-day kind of stuff. But I still use a notepad and paper. I find I've got dreadful handwriting, but I find if I write something down and review my notes, I remember it quite well. Perhaps better than if I type something on a keyboard and try and remember it. I've got a few different apps for Japanese language learning, which this fantastic. When I got here, you probably had a Japanese teacher. You had textbooks and a paper dictionary, or you bought what we call a Canon word tank, if anyone knows what that is. But it's like 20,000 yen. It was a basic made by Canon, a kind of general purpose or something Japanese dictionary. But now you've got all sorts of apps for podcasts or kanji learning or finding teachers and having lessons and all sorts of stuff. So I'll play around with a bunch of that, always looking for better ways to kind of improve Japanese skills too. Because my work has always been in English, that has been great as an English speaker, but also too easy, and hasn't, for me, Japanese is kind of is personal life, is outside of work, outside of business. I wasn't pushed into learning Japanese for work from sort of day one, whereas other people I know kind of were kind of thrown at the deep end in Japanese companies. Things and the technology that can help you improve your Japanese, that is fantastic. So, definitely shop around and play around with lots of different tools if you're kind of working on your Japanese skills. There's a lot of great stuff out there.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's quite a lot of stuff about the tool stuff, and yeah, it's. I like how you said you kind of use the iPad Mini and the keyboard, so it's kind of a nice thing. I do that sometimes. I don't have a Mini, but it's a iPad. Yeah, it's nice to be portable sometimes.
It's also a bit less stressful if you leave your bag on the train, which I've done a couple of times. Like going to the office and I get off the train and I'm like, hold on a minute, didn't I have a bag when I got on the train? And I've just been, a bit lost. Luckily, the 2 times I've done that, I got my bag back with everything in it. I just had to go to the end of the Hibiya line and collect it. Losing an iPad Mini is a bit less of a hit than like losing a laptop. So,
yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. So, yeah, we're just coming on to the final part now, and what we're gonna do is just we're gonna just talk about any final advice you may have in terms of as a recruiter based in Japan for all the audience, anyone who wants to find the international job. So for our example, it could be just someone from UK going to Japan, and also just please also tell us how we can connect with you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, I guess, so perhaps recapping sort of general advice, if you're, in the tech space, which is my area, it's probably easiest to find a role here if you're sort of mid to senior level in whatever you do, more difficult if you're more junior. And so that's kind of the sweet spot. I've said to quite a few people, get a couple of years, get 3+ years experience at home and then do your job hunting in Japan. That's much easier from that point. So I think, sort of build experience is probably the first thing. Work on and improving your Japanese skills. N5 and N4, if you know the N1 to N5 Japanese language proficiency tests. N5 and N4 aren't particularly helpful in job hunting. They're very basic. They can show potentially hirers that you're actually serious about studying because you're going off and spending a half a day doing a test. N3 in the tech space is probably the sort of minimum that will be helpful in finding a role. N2 and N1, again, on top of that, the more the better. I think check and make sure that you qualify for a work visa before you invest a lot of time coming to Japan or job hunting. There are different visa options like the engineer visa, highly skilled professional, and a few others, but have a basic check before you spend some time on that. I've spoken to people who've put a lot of effort into job hunting in Japan, but when I look at them and talk to them, I'm like, oh, actually, you're not going to be able to get a visa based on where you are in your career, your educational background, and things like that. So check these things out first as well. If you have the opportunity to visit, obviously, even if it's for 3 months, to spend some time in the sort of tech community. It's a very welcoming tech community here. Lots of meetups, events every day, from 5-person little startup focused things to massive big consumer events. So if you spend some time here as a tourist, digital nomad, working holiday visa, if that's possible. If you can't get here, then networking, even online, making connections on LinkedIn and other networking can be helpful to get referrals, understand the job market and other things like that. So yeah, if it's your dream, go for it. It can be frustrating. It's very, very competitive. I said it wasn't always so competitive. It may not be in the future. Japan's kind of going through a bit of a phase now where it's kind of flavor of the month. That may change with, once everyone's had a holiday here, maybe that things, and the yen weakens, maybe things cool off and somewhere else takes over as the top destination. But, if Japan is somewhere you want to be, I think it's chase the dream if that's what you want to do. And in terms of finding me, I'm on LinkedIn, just to Paul Roberts Japan, and you'll get my ugly mug. Happy to connect and have a chat with anybody. Also, my blog, newsletter, and job board is at paulroberts.jp. You can connect through the contact form on there as well.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Paul. It's been a pleasure. We've spoken for more than an hour. We've covered a lot of stuff there, and really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Well, great to catch up with you. Looking forward to seeing you again over here sooner rather than later as well.
Yeah, sure. So, thanks for that, Paul. And just want to say for the audience, so this is it for our episode 2, and we appreciate you watching. And we will keep you up to date with episode 3. So, thanks a lot, and hey, take care, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you liked it. Please leave a review, subscribe, or share it to anyone you like. If you're a global founder, or as a professional, or a founder that is interested in doing global business, we would love to hear your story. If you would like to be featured on Bridging Talks, please email me at podcast@bridgingconnect.com, or you can visit our website, bridgingconnect.com/podcast. I am your host, Majid Hashmi, and I will see you soon. Take care.